G'day everyone, Artist Wayne again with a very special video. Do you know what season it is here in New South Wales, Australia, boys and girls? Well, it's winter time. So you know what that means? It's time for the Frozen Butt Ride! Hang on, I'm not part of the Frozen Butt Ride. That's for the tar riders. That's for the guys and girls who ride on the road, who ride from cafe to cafe, sipping lattes and looking lovingly at each other's bikes.
Not yet, Glenn.
No, I'm part of the Frozen Butt Adventure Ride! And we don't mind getting dirty. And the man at the front of the pack, the man leading us all on our little adventure ride, well, do I really need to introduce him? Because he's even gaining a fan base on my own YouTube channel. He's my mate and yours. It's the one and only Dusty Taylor.
Put your helmet off. What do you got your helmet off for? Don't take your helmet off.
And our group of 30 adventure riders, along with the 30 road riders who are being led by Glenn Currington, we're all converging on the beautiful small New South Wales former gold mining town of Hill End. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on a 3-day charity ride raising funds for cystic fibrosis. It's the brainchild of Mr. Glenn Currington, and he works tirelessly organising this huge event each year. In fact, all weekend he was calling us heroes, but Glenn, you're the real hero, mate. And just look at the beautiful places us adventure riders get to go. Also, some of us DR riders have certain skills and powers, kind of like a Jedi Knight. Watch as I make Daryl scratch his head just by me scratching his teddy bear's head. But with great power comes great responsibility. And we can't sit around all day like we're in a cafe. We've got kilometres and kilometres of dirt to cover and beautiful scenic lookouts to visit. Look, Dusty's Honda shrunk when it got wet! And looky here, my mate Marcus was on the ride and I didn't even know it. He'd been camouflaged the whole time. We were now riding through a little piece of heaven in northwest New South Wales, a place called Jurong Gates. And I can tell you now, some of the sections through here were so slippery. This little rocky hill caught a few of the riders out, including our mate Alex. But after we all left, our mate Craig, who happened to be the sweep, came off his DR650 and broke his foot. So next year I think we're going to need a sweep to sweep for the sweep who's sweeping. Now as us riders were nearing the exit to Jurong gates, those of us that had been on the ride last year were getting a little apprehensive, a little nervous. Not for our own well-being and safety, oh no, we were worried about our mate Sam. Because it was this time last year when we started doing these water crossings, albeit there was a lot more water last year. Our mate Sam took his DR650 for a big swim. Needless to say, we didn't know how he'd react. We were worried about him. Would he make a triumphant return this year and conquer the raging flood? Of course he bloody would.
Go out today and have a really good time. Enjoy yourself. Come back here. We'll have a great night tonight. Another good night like last night.
That's right, Glenn. It was an awesome night Friday night. And we were up bright and early for a rider's brief before we hit the trails on the bridle track. Today we were going to ride all morning and then meet up with the road riders for lunch at a very special place. Second day of riding, and the weather was perfect. And our mate Bushy managed to find the only hole in this causeway. After this, I left the group in pursuit of my mate Sam. We were going to position ourselves at the big fallen rock, which blocks the trail, leaves a small gap just big enough for us riders. It was the perfect place to wait for the rest of the group. Then we were off in search of more trails. We were all having fun now riding around Mount Mountainous. It's a mountain on a spur of the Great Dividing Range. It's located in the Central Tablelands region of New South Wales, and it had us located closer to our special lunch date. And when you get a blanket of pine needles sitting on red clay, it becomes very slippery, as our mate Jay found out in his 660 Tenere. And us adventure riders don't just ride all day, we do some wet, dark, mountainous caving. We climb down poisonous plant-infested mountainsides, and that's after scaling slippery, sheer rock faces, where one wrong move will result in death. It is, after all, a Dusty Taylor adventure ride.
We come from all the way up there.
Then it was time for our lunch date with Dusty's beautiful family. They had put on the biggest and tastiest feed ever. They had worked tirelessly to provide us with a huge smorgasbord of delicious foods, cakes, coffee and tea. After lunch we bid farewell to the road riders, we bid farewell to Dusty's awesome family, and it was time for us adventure riders to refuel and then make our way back towards Hill End. But first we needed to work that lunch off. We were going to do that by crossing the Wari River. This would be one of the hardest river crossings I've done so far. And the first two brave riders to cross were both on huskies, one of which disappeared under the water. This was a long crossing full of big slippery rocks, and it took a lot of strength and a great balancing act to keep your bike from falling over. And if riding across once wasn't enough, I did it again on Sam's crappy DR650. He was, after all, still recuperating after shattering his wrist only a few months ago. And that's what mates are for. And I also still had time to pose for the cameras. This is what adventure riding with a top bunch of blokes is all about. Everyone pitching in and helping one another. And eventually the last rider, my mate Jace, after helping everyone, came across on his DRZ. The following morning we were all up bright and early after a fantastic night of prizes and giveaways. Sam was already on his bike ready and raring to go, and after our rider's brief we bid farewell to Glenn and we hit the trails. We were now heading towards the beautiful Bylong Valley. You know, in Spain they have the running of the bulls, but here in Australia we ride with them. Well, they're not really bulls, it's just cattle, but we do ride with them. And the only thing we have to be careful of are the landmines. And I'm talking about the soft, squishy, smelly kind. We mounted a camera on the back of Dusty's Africa Twin. He wanted a straight line of bikes snaking their way down the twisties of the Bylong Valley. There's always one rider that just has to be different. Sam, excuse me. And if you listen carefully here, you can actually hear my bearings making a hell of a racket. By the time I got home on this last day of riding and got around to pulling my rear wheel off, my bearings came out in pieces. One of the outer casings was virtually heat welded to the hub. And now we come to the worst part of the ride. It's when our mate Jason collided with a tree, and he and his bike ended up down an embankment. But the best thing about a situation like this is everybody pitches in and rallies around a fallen mate. And being a typical rider, Jason was more worried about his motorcycle, which some of the boys had out of there in no time.
It's alright.
Then it was time for me to use my powers of healing. But all jokes aside, Jason sustained an injury that required him to be transferred to hospital. So we all waited for the emergency services and kept Jason as comfortable as possible. And it didn't take long before the RFS were there. A police four-wheel drive, a highway patrol car, an ambulance, and a helicopter.
G'day Wayne.
Alright.
I'm Mick, I'll speak on the radio.
Yeah.
We then proceeded to get Jace into an emergency sleeping bag,
Lifting on 3, 1, 2, 3.
where we could then lift him into the emergency stretcher.
And yep, coming down.
And then everyone pitched in to finally get our mate Jason up the steep embankment onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. Now this all took place in the densely forested Commission Road, and we were halfway between Jerry's Plains and the Putty Road. Once Jason was in the ambulance, it then took him the couple of k's to the waiting helicopter. And I'll tell you what, those guys did a tremendous job landing the helicopter where they did.
Thanks everyone.
All the emergency services did a fantastic job in looking after Jason. By now it was late in the afternoon and we still had a long way to go. And we ended up making our way out through the California Trail in the dark, which I must say was a lot of fun. Although I was worried about my rear wheel falling off. So from everyone on the Frozen Butt ride, Jason, we wish you a speedy recovery. And for a bit of a laugh, this is just for you.
Hey! Hey!
Yeah? Yeah, Stuffy?
Is that Catherine? Hang on, let's get a bit closer, let's see.
Is that the Pelican Princess?
That... Oh...
How are you?
That's the real Pelican Princess, mate. The real one.
That's a great look.
Have you taken your medication, please?
See you later Wayne.